And I want to not cause an issue, but cause maybe a different mode of thinking around the charges that are swirling around the Georgia shooter phenomenon. Number one, a little bit of information on me. I am a retired parole officer. I supervise the violent criminals, murderers. I also have been a counselor for youth and adults, and I have my master's in psychology. So this is not just coming from somewhere. This is coming from a lot of thought and a lot of time spent in the correction system and in the probation, in the courtroom, where I'm watching things go down, where I'm watching how these charges actually affect society beyond just the families that it touches. So one of my first issues with the Georgia shooter, and let me explain, number one, I'm not trying to downplay anything that this troubled young man did. In my belief, if you take a life, you basically forfeit your own. That is my personal belief. But I also have to look at the law, and I have to understand how my beliefs mesh with the law, and when it comes right down to it, we have to obey the law of the land. This is why maybe I'm worried. The things that occur when a school shooting takes place is something that drastically shows, number one, a cognitive issue, number two, an emotional maturity issue, and number three, a self-awareness issue. These children, which is what they are mentally and physically, are struggling to understand their emotions and their surroundings. They are struggling because of numerous issues. Take a pick. If you're a teenager and you have hormones and you have a lot of physical issues, you have a lot of social issues, it could be one of a gazillion issues. That being said, to take a drastic action like this shows that you have such limited cognition and such limited self-awareness and such limited understanding of society and the world around you and the ripple effect, that it states that you are very much underdeveloped mentally, emotionally. And that is something that cannot truly be diagnosed without a long amount of time spent with the young person, or without a lot of understanding of the social scenarios and the home life of the individual. That is something that counselors and therapists take sometimes several meetings to try to understand just a little snippet of the core of the individual they're trying to help. So when I saw the other day that the father had been arrested too, I have no issues with the father being arrested for gross negligence, neglect, and a whole bunch of other charges. The one that makes me question the sanity of our nation is the involuntary manslaughter charge for purchasing the weapon. I have heard many media outlets say that he gifted his son a weapon. That is not what occurred. You cannot gift a child a weapon. You cannot legally give a child a weapon. And if you purchase a weapon, that weapon is in your name. It is your weapon. And when the federal agent spoke to him, he said, I purchased this gross incompetence for him to purchase a gun after his child had already been deemed irresponsible emotionally and struggling with certain ideations. At the same time, I can say that growing up in Appalachia and hunting, when everyone gets to an age where everyone wants to hunt and it's a family event and that's how we eat through the winter, then you go purchase a secondary deer rifle. It is the parents' deer rifle, but you may allow your teenage son or teenage daughter to use that weapon during deer hunting so that they may also juvenile hunt and then hunt until they are able to purchase their own gun. It is not their gun. It is the parent's gun, and the parent must be responsible for putting that gun back up and monitoring them when they have it in their hands. So I can find fault with the father in many ways. Here is my beef with the charge of involuntary manslaughter for the purchase of the gun. That gun is in his name. It is not in the child's name. And while he may have allowed the child to use it, and the child uses it inappropriately, obviously, it was not bequeathed to him. According to the feds, it said that it was kept separate from the ammunition or kept up. Therefore, when the child took the weapon, he took so without the consent of the owner of the weapon. and did atrocious things. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the young man, he needs to be in prison for the remainder of his life. He is not conducive to society. And for whatever reason, whether someone failed him, the system failed him, you do not take those actions to harm others. If you feel you need help, you don't take it out on others, you ask for help. And that was his decision to take those actions, and he must be punished for those. There are consequences for almost everything. I believe the father has gross negligence, child neglect, and numerous other issues going on and other charges that should be applied. I have a problem with the involuntary manslaughter because, number one, like I said, he purchased the gun under his name. It was his weapon. The child took it with a weapon. Now, again, I fault the father for buying a weapon after the feds had already knocked on the door and said, your child has problems. Obviously, this man does not have the greatest thinking mechanism located between his ears. We all understand that. At the same time, if you think about the way that the legalities of this could stretch to other people, people say, well, I don't buy my child a weapon. I would never buy my child a weapon. Did you buy your 16-year-old a car? You bought your child a weapon. So what happens if we start seeing children get into car accidents and being an accident for a reason, and we start seeing parents charged for buying the child a weapon, a car? This is something that could tear our legal system apart. This is something where I was told by a really great criminal court judge one time that we cannot punish on what we think occurred. We can only punish on what we have factual evidence that did occur. If I were this is a big stretch, but if I were the father in jail right now, I would be requesting to speak to a sheriff's deputy or a district attorney, and I would be filing theft charges on my child for stealing the gun. Because it was taken without consent. I have a hard time thinking they will make this stick, but look again in Michigan what has occurred. This is not going to stop school shootings. We cannot begin to punish enough people to stop those with rogue and truly black souls. We cannot stop evil by litigating it. It's not going to happen. We can place these people in prisons where they hopefully can't harm anyone else, but we will constantly and consistently have those that struggle mentally, emotionally with these issues and thoughts that make them produce these horrible behaviors. The wider the ripple effect of the people we punish does nothing. But I have an idea that what they're trying to do is make every parent terrified to, number one, purchase a weapon or own a weapon. Now, 1 in every 2 households in America has a gun. If you look at the true statistics, we're actually a very mild population when it comes to gun violence. Most of the gun violence, and I say most, probably 80% or more, is done by stolen weapons or weapons acquired illegally. Those are not going to be stopped with new gun laws or new background searches. Nothing would have stopped this because it was an illegal action the entire way. What happens if we punish parents so much that they are in fear for themselves, look at their child as a bomb waiting to go off, and are terrified to buy a baseball bat, a butcher block of steak knives, a car, a scooter, anything that could be used to harm another person in any way, shape, or form? Are we going to become such a litigious society that we think we can punish people to where they will not do this again? You can't. You can't. No matter how many people you punish, because the mother in this case has criminal background. She has criminal issues. It has been said allegedly a polysubstance abuse, and the father apparently is struggling with his parenting skills. Think of what could have stopped this. And everyone is blaming, now they're blaming the school counselor. School counselors are not psychologists. They deal with hundreds of children, and their hands are basically tied by the government. They can refer out, but without the approval of the child coming to them and the consent of the parents, nothing can be done. So we're starting to place blame where blame cannot be. We're starting to tell people that they had the absolute, power to change this when they did not. And what we're doing is we're hoping, we're having what I call distance. What is it? It's you're in love with the distance. You think, oh, we can do this, and in the future it will be okay. We can stop this, and in the future it won't occur. We can change this, and children will no longer do this. That's fiction. We cannot stop these children from doing these things. Sadly, purely due to what I would like to call Russian roulette when it comes to generating a person, there are so many different things within these people as they grow, change, mature, the chemicals, the hormones, everything that changes, and nature versus nurture. And there is no way to understand what may tick somebody to behave in this manner. All we can do is hopefully observe and try to catch this quicker. We can't punish everyone for one person's actions. And we certainly can't say the father killed someone voluntarily or involuntarily when he did not pull the trigger and did not take a life. He did, however, I believe, act with gross negligence as a parent and should be punished. But I'm not sure that involuntary manslaughter is the correct application of our law. And if they begin doing this again like they did in Michigan, we are going to see our law mean nothing and spread out to basically consume whatever demographic lawyers want to attack, or whatever demographic the lawyers are told to put pressure upon. I've seen this firsthand in the courtrooms. I would not wish it upon anyone. Consequences and repercussions are something that never touch some people's mind, whether they've spent 2 minutes in jail or 20 years in jail. I have supervised people that are more comfortable in custody. And when I looked at the mugshot of that young man, he looked as though he was right where he wanted to be. For whatever reason, he chose to do these actions and put himself in that position. And if you look at the mugshot, he looks very comfortable in jail. Perhaps there is something going on in him that we can learn so that we can see it in others before it occurs again. But if we keep rippling out blame, we forget to look at the person who pulled the trigger, the person who took the lives, the person who approved this behavior mentally, emotionally, and physically. And that is the person we need to be focused upon. So be careful what you root for and what you say is a great thing. A lot of people are saying it's a great thing that they're punishing this father. Granted, he does need punishment. His parenting skills are highly amiss. And he did not do anything for his child. I believe he missed several key indicators before the feds ever got involved. But if we allow people to punish people on a whim, you could have stopped this, so therefore you are guilty as well. Imagine how far that will spread, especially in this day and age of political hate. There's no other word for it. We all have different ideations about what a perfect world is, but the law is what keeps us centrally together and understanding what we're all under, what we all are responsible to. And if we begin changing this as we begin changing our vocabulary, our language, then we are going to basically make prison a timeout and scatter the responsibility so far and wide that there is actually no punishment hard enough for the true person that needs it that will possibly stop someone else from doing the same thing in the future. But if you are saying, yes, I'm for this, what if you bought your child a car and they had a car accident and killed someone? Truly, purely an accident. Going 50 plus miles on the road, things happen. It's purely an accident. Perhaps the car malfunctioned. What if they deem that was not, that's not going to do it for us? The lawyer and the district attorney and the police all say, well, you bought them that car, so you helped kill this person, therefore you have involuntary manslaughter charges. How many parents would have gone to prison for their children having an automobile accident? We have to look at this in longevity terms. What are we turning our world into? What are we turning our law into? By default, by both of those, what are we turning our society into? We're turning our society into a lot of scared people that are going to be terrified to have a weapon, protect themselves in their home, for fear that someone else may steal the weapon and they will be charged with it. We have to be very careful here. I've seen the law change so much, especially when I was actively in the courtroom. I saw many things I did not agree with. I saw a man that had been accosted and assaulted 3 times by the same individual, then get bum rushed by the individual coming into his home when he was not supposed to have any contact or be there, state that he was going to kill that man. That man barely had time, as the man rushed toward him, the man barely had time to grab a pistol and hip it and fire a shot, trying to scare the man away. Unfortunately, it grazed his head and nicked an artery, a vessel, and he bled out. When the ambulance got there, the man was holding him, wrapped in a towel, begging Jesus to not let him go. Because even as violent as the young man had been, he did not want to have to take that life. I watched that man go through court. And they said because he had a gun in the vicinity, he was looking for trouble. I have many guns in my vicinity. I've never looked for trouble. I disagreed with my criminal court judge that day. That's the one call that I was like, no, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. And I had to supervise that man to the law. While internally I was like, if somebody came in my home and attacked me, I would probably have behaved in the same manner. If you come in my home and say you're going to kill me when you're not supposed to have any contact or be on the property, I'm going to deem that as a threat to my life, and I'm going to behave in a way that will save my life. I've seen the court misconstrue so many things. And we just need to honestly look at this and say, the young man is at fault. We need to talk to him and learn from him so that maybe we can help other people not become him. That's going to be difficult for a lot of people to try to use him for knowledge, but we're in a position where that's the only thing we can do, because punishing everyone is not going to stop this. It is simply going to make more people hesitant to have weapons in their home that could protect them. And if you look at gun stats, like I said, 1 in every 2 homes has guns, has weapons, and we are actually a very mild gun population, and we're actually very responsible. Most of the things that happen with guns happen with illegal weapons, stolen weapons, or trafficked weapons. Most of the weapons are provided by mafia and other gangs coming up from Central and South America. And I know this because of work, because of a career in corrections. I just hope that people understand the implications that expanding the law like this can do. If you read the annotated code, it certainly does not put this man in the category of immediately responsible for the deaths. Now, I believe he was grossly negligent. I believe he was a poor parent. I believe there's a lot of charges that can be applied to him. I do not, however, believe that involuntary manslaughter is going to be something that is going to benefit our society if we start pressing these charges on parents. Parents need to be more responsible. Perhaps the government needs to understand that we need a parent at home and we don't need a 2-party parent working system anymore. Perhaps the government needs to understand that daycares do not provide the emotional support that young children need to mature and grow up. Perhaps the government needs to understand that playing Call of Duty to reap new people that are very quick-fingered for army positions is a bad idea. And as I sit here, I think, perhaps the government should know these things. But with the Edgewood experiments and with Operation Paperclip, I don't think our government's going to understand anything except terrify the public so that they will not protect themselves, so that they live in fear of prosecution, and so that every gun on the street will be an illegal weapon and no one will be able to protect themselves. Okay, Priscilla. I'll try to Facebook call you in a minute. But this is something that I've struggled with, because absolutely the young man has to be punished. He took lives. That is like the most atrocious behavior as a human. But please look at what expanding the law without having it read correctly. Go read the annotated code in your state. Go read the annotated code that's being placed upon this father. Read it. See if it does apply. See if it should be prosecuted, if it can carry through court. I personally don't think it should, but in Michigan, we've already seen that that doesn't matter. But look at how be a responsible parent, be a very aware parent, be a hyper aware parent, be a dogmatic parent if you have to. That's your job. No one can tell you how to parent except for you. But at the same time, don't make our parents terrified to allow their children to grow up and have experiences. Don't think that one child handling a weapon makes all children that handle a weapon evil. No. I do believe the father is grossly incompetent when it comes to parenting. And I think his negligence is part of the problem. I also think there's probably, in my personal opinion, from my education and my time in the corrections and therapeutic world, I believe that this young man was struggling. I also have one other thing I'd like to say to parents. We need to tell our children that they are not everything. They're our pride and joy. We love them. They're everything to us. But in the world, you are simply another soul. You are trying to function just like all the other souls out there. And as special as you are to me, someone else that you pass on the street is just as special to someone else. You do not usurp their worthiness. Because I love you, everyone out there is loved by someone. We need to stop telling our children that they are so daggum important. Life is struggle. Growing up is messy. Mistakes will be made. And I think a lot of children today are so hyper-focused on themselves and the portrayal online of a specific lifestyle that we fail for them to actually live life. Have mistakes, learn lessons, be sloppy. Lessons are important. But we also have a lot of children walking around out there that think everything is about them. Parents, we need to do a better job. We need to do a better job. Luckily, my children are grown. I held my breath the entire time till they were 18. Because as good as my children were, I knew it's so simple to break the law. It's so simple to do something stupid. It's so simple to get yourself in trouble. And I stress this to my children, mostly because I supervised a caseload of about 270 offenders, mostly murderers and violent offenders. But I stress this to my children. I don't believe parents are stressing to their children. Life sometimes sucks. Emotions are not where you live, they're bus stops. Daily life changes. Your body's changing, your mind is changing, the chemicals, your hormones. You're going to grow up and be different every day for about 7 years. And your brain does not form until 22 to 25 years of age. So if you feel like you don't have a grasp on things, it's okay. You don't. That's why you have a family and others to talk to. Where our family's gone? Where have our communities gone? Where has the love gone? Online support, online counseling is not a substitute for face-to-face counseling. A therapist needs to see body behaviors. This little square and these little people we speak to through this little mechanism, they are not a replacement for the people that love us, the people that show us boundaries and parameters in life, people that show us positive lifestyles and negative lifestyles, people that teach us the best lessons in life. That happens in person. Are you personally raising your children? It seems in this world, even if you are, you possibly could be criminally charged for something you did not do. As neglectful as the parent is, unless they pulled a trigger and extinguish a life, I think we need to be careful about expanding this law, when it's not written that way, to encompass parents as part of the guilty party. I hope this man does get charged with multiple charges. I hope that he has a huge epiphany with his life about what he has done. I hope that maybe he can turn things around and potentially maybe speak and help other parents learn the signs and stop other children from struggling like his child did. I hope there's a positive that can come from this, because 4 lives were taken. And if we stay negative, that's not remembering them. That's not respecting what happened to them. We need to try to turn this around and learn and educate. That being said, I believe our government is on a way of funneling us all into the black sheep category and making us feel terrified to, number one, have children. Look at the birth rates. Number two, raise children. Number three, punish children. And then number four, be ultimately responsible when they do something completely on their own. This young man took a gun that did not belong to him. It was registered to the father. And he enacted several murderous behaviors. While there's punishment to be had, I believe we need to look at the law a little bit more and realize that if we allow this to keep going this way, pretty soon parents will be on the line for car accidents, parents will be on the line for skateboarding accidents, parents will be on the line for school fights. Growing up is difficult. Growing up is messy, and you're not going to raise children without having various speed bumps. I hope no one encounters the speed bumps that this man did, but if you do, I hope that you reach out and ask for help. But also, I hope you understand that speed bumps are part of raising children. And we don't need to hide what's going on. We need to ask for help. We need to openly engage in conversation with others. We need to have a community feeling, a community care. What happened to having other people to talk to? Parents are being terrified right now in many ways. You must uphold everything your child is thinking, even though their brains are not completely formed. You must uphold every emotional ideal they have, even though many times they're not old enough to understand what they're misconstruing. And you may not punish your child because they'll say you were, harming them or making them feel that they are not important. I think if you punish your child, they know they're important. If you take the time to have a consequence for bad behavior because you're trying to raise the next generation, your child will thank you in a few years. I know that my daughter greatly thanked me when she grew up. When she went to college, she said, "Thank you for raising me differently. I'm surrounded by idiots." I think parents have a better job to do. I think they need to work harder. I think they have a lot of learning to do. That being said, I have to say, just because you gave birth or genetically spawned someone and they did something heinous does not mean that you can always be counted as also the guilty party. This father did stupid things. He should not have bought a gun after the feds were there. He should not have engaged his son in these behaviors. He should have gone a different route with responsibility. But at the end of the day, that child stole that gun to commit these murders. He should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. The father should also be punished, but I believe that involuntary manslaughter is stretching our law too much. And after sitting in courtrooms for over a decade, working with youth and adults, violent offenders, I believe that we are looking at something that is going to harm the family, harm families from protecting themselves, harm families from having very big conversations with their children, and also allow the government to expand even further to where if you bought your child a car and they had a car accident, now you're responsible. You bought them a skateboard, you're responsible. You bought them a scooter, you're responsible. And I believe at some point we have to say, personal responsibility. There is a gap age in the teenage years where a child has to learn on their own, has to go out and challenge the world. But hopefully you've structured them enough to where they'll do it in a positive way. The government needs to understand that as well. But I think one of the biggest things the government needs to understand is that your program to raise children in communes of daycare without the emotional and interpersonal support they need failed our society greatly. Having two parents required to work failed our society greatly. Spraying things above our heads that you don't know how it augments our chemical composition, it hurt our society greatly. And so I think if we want to say who's responsible, we probably need to look at the government a little bit too. This was the Georgia shooting. The Michigan shooting, they did convict the parents, and I think this is a dangerous precedent to set. I've been in court with my career a lot, and I will tell you that lawyers are just people, but they love to win. And most of the court system is about winning. It's not about what's right, what's wrong. It's about winning. It's about making money, and it's about creating an annual cash cow for the county, city, or state. That frustrated me. That frustrated me a lot. So there's multiple ways to look at this. This is just one avenue I want parents to be aware of. Happy birthday, Maisie. This is just one avenue that I want parents to be aware of. This is something that I see our government trying to do more and more often. Repercussions and consequences are great things if they're applied to the right person. If they're applied to the wrong person, it will create just another issue. So we really need to become very hyper aware of the laws in our area. Read your mine's the Tennessee Annotated Code, but read the Annotated Code in your area, understand it, know it, memorize it. I've met so many deputies and people that actually charge people. They don't understand the charges that they are pressing. They don't understand the laws. They don't understand the legal capacity in which they're working. There are so many failures. There are so many failures in our society, and we can keep laying blame wherever we want to, but until we say, hey, we've got a problem, we've got to fix it, we've got to look at it, say it exists, study it, and fix it, this is not going to change. And for all the people laying blame, what you need to do is stop casting energy outward, turn it in on your family, and fix whatever you can in your family. You can't fix anyone else. Fix what you can in your family, and maybe your family will be a beacon for someone else that's struggling. But I believe that we're taking leniencies within the law that are dangerous, and I believe that we have been for several years. And I believe that we need to also be aware, especially as parents, and this is from a therapeutic standpoint, there's literally 0.03% of the population that struggle with an identity issue. But our media, our social media, our movies, and it seems like every aspect of life has this pushed upon our children to where they think it is a huge issue. It's not. It's a very minor issue. And the unbalanced proportion of what our children see concerns me. Because while there are large populations of religious, calm, loving, happy, positive families, it seems like our media and our government want to press the struggling, the confused, the angry. And I think it is as the parent, you need to become a net for your child and explain to them, I understand that this is an issue for this percentage of the population, but do you know that there are other percentages of the population that are not being acknowledged in our media and our social media and in our movies? And let's look at all of the different types of families and people and loves in the world so that you're not stuck on just the one that's being presented to you. Education never hurts anyone. When I was young and struggling with religion, I studied every religion to make sure that the one I chose was the right one. I think children deserve that as well. And I think our government and our media, and I think they're doing a disservice to our society. I don't have any hate or issues with anyone. I just believe that we should actually show the proportion of society instead of pushing just one narrative or two narratives. I think that we're being forced like cattle down a gangway, and we're going to get so far that there's no way back out. And I believe that legal minds are having a heyday with this. All this does is make lawyers rich, makes the government more powerful, and it makes society weaker. So police your own home so no one else has to police it. Punish your children appropriately, not with hate, not with anger, but with love. Talk to them. Tell them about the real world. Study other, societies and cultures so they understand this is not the only choice they have. Make them aware that they are not the end-all be-all of the world. Everyone is precious. There are just small things you can do. And if you're struggling in your relationship, tell them you're struggling and you hope that they have a better relationship and that your relationship is not an ideal one for them to replicate when they get older. Be honest with your kids. And we might see these things reduce. Stop portraying a make believe life on social media and tell your child what is true, what is honest, what is real, and prepare them for the hiccups and speed bumps in growing up. Growing up is messy. Let them know that. This probably could not have been stopped. I believe there's probably a chemical imbalance or issue that's going on here. And I'm not pulling that out of my butt. I have my master's in psychology. I believe there's something else going on here. I believe it was in nature, nurture, environmental. Everything was working against this young man, but at the same time, we have seen people crawl out of families like this and become great people. So I can't say that, oh, he didn't have a chance. Everyone has a chance. Some just choose not to take it. Some don't know how to take it. Some want to punish others for what they feel they're struggling with. And that's probably the biggest thing that's happening in our society right now. We want other people to be responsible for what we feel. You can't do that. That is a no-win situation. So talk to your kids, look at your law, talk to your officials in your area, let them know that this concerns you if it does. It concerns me greatly because I know how the law is written. I know how it's supposed to be applied, and I do not think this is appropriate application of the law. At the same time, I can see in the future that if you buy your child a car and they have a car accident to harm somebody, you could be potentially on the hook for an accident, for something that your child was responsible for something that was out of your hands completely. We need to stop having our emotions be the thing that makes our decisions, and we need to start looking at things logically. And if someone tries to make you feel an emotion, normally it's because they want to control the way you respond. Pull back, look at the whole thing, and make your decision without tears or without any kind of emotional, upheaval. A lot of people do not control the way they look at things. And that is the one thing that you can do to combat the society we live in. We're each responsible for ourselves. Parents, you do have a certain responsibility to children, but I believe in this regard, our law is being rendered ineffective. I think it's being used as a scare tactic for other families, a scare tactic for families that need to protect themselves. Obviously, when you raise children, you have to be careful. But when you raise children, you also have to protect yourself. I don't think parents should be scared like this. I think this young man stole the weapon and performed a task that no one could have deemed possible. And he should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. The father also needs charges, but I'm not sure that involuntary manslaughter is the appropriate application of our law. I hope you all look into this. I hope you all read about this. I hope you all challenge your perspective on this and look up other case studies to see how it used to be, what charges used to be brought, how things used to be handled, because it was much more efficient 20, 30 years ago. And why is our legal system, our justice system, our penal system, why is that kind of being used as a Howard Johnson for people that just don't want to work in society? We have the ability to reform a lot of people. We should be doing that. I, as a retired parole officer, saw great reformation in my caseload. Some people are doing great. I'm like in awe of how much they have worked to turn their life around. And yet we have so many people in prison without programs, without funding. They started a program in my state where they would get them mental health treatment and send them to rehabilitation if they would just tell us they had a problem. But if they told us they had a problem, it could take us 6 to 8 weeks to get them in with a therapist that could get them to access the funds to get them in rehab. And in that 6 to 8 weeks, if you tested them they were positive for anything or they had any issues, you would send them back to prison. So they were very hesitant to tell you they needed help, because the help also came with a catch-all that you had 6 to 8 weeks to put them back in prison. Government programs are not all they're cracked up to be. And a lot of officers, when someone asks for help, they would not try to help them. They would just simply take it as a way to get them back in jail. We have a lot of people in jail that don't need to be in jail. We have prisons full of people that shouldn't be in prison. We send people to prison. They're not heavy offenders. They go and they learn horrible things from the people that are there for a long time, or they are subjugated into a workload when they come back out for the gangs and stuff that are in the prisons. Going to prison is not a positive for anyone. Now, there are some people that need to be there, but for the minimum offender, it simply only entangles your life further in something you don't need to be around. So we need to work on reformation. We need to work on logical application of the law. We need to work on holding each person accountable to themselves. We need to say, parents, you have certain responsibilities, but at the same time, we have to understand that personal behavior and personal actions cannot be applied to someone else. I hope this never happens again. I hope that no other child has to go to school scared. I hope that no other child has to be so confused, dark, and empty that they would do this to another person. But I don't think we're looking at this logically as a society. I think we need to look at our law and how it's being bent and usurped, and look at the long game here and where are we going. That's all I want to say. I hope that everyone, gun control would not have stopped what happened. The man had every right to buy a gun. A teenager, even if it's in a safe, is probably going to know how to get into that safe. A teenager wants to steal a gun and hurt somebody is going to steal a gun and hurt somebody. There's no way that gun control would have helped that. Just like in Kentucky the other day when a man that was in court February but doesn't have a conviction bought a weapon, bought 1,000 rounds of ammo, and began shooting people off of I-75 in Kentucky. People said, how did he get the gun? Well, he was charged, but there's been no conviction. But let me tell you something about small county courts. They will sometimes withhold up to 500 judgment orders for several months until they send them into the state. Guess what? If your judgment order has not been turned into the state, it won't show up on a background check. You can purchase that weapon. Whose fault would that be? Why, it would be the district attorney's fault and the circuit court clerk. But who is it going to fall upon? Gun owners, legal gun owners, and people that think gun control actually is something they can do better. No, it's not. We need the people that send the paperwork into the state, work in the courts. We need them to be appropriate, not waiting 8 months to round up 500 judgment orders to send in to save money. Within 6 weeks, the state needs to know that that person has a conviction. I mean, it's just that simple. That person needs to be known as a convicted felon. There's so many things that you think, oh, it's the gun owners or it's the people selling. No, it's not. It's the people in control. It's the government officials. It's the people that are responsible for notifying at higher levels that this is convicted felon. I worked as IPO of 2 county jails. I took the position away from a male officer. He had not signed 475 pieces of paper for sentence management. That means 475 offenders did not have appropriate paperwork on file with sentence management to, number one, notify the state of their sentence timing, their calculation of their time, and to calculate their time. So they were sitting on dead time. I found 2 that had served over their sentence and had to do emergency releases because they were appropriate for release. Sometimes the person that is saying you're in trouble is the person that created the trouble. And if you don't understand gun control, go and read about gun control. Go and fill out a background report and understand what you have to, by law, raise your hand and swear to when you fill it out. Understand that there is no way more gun control is going to stop someone that is hell-bent on harming someone. Like I said, 80+% of the gun violence in this nation is caused by illegal weapons that are stolen or trafficked And I'm just going to tell you that guns that Obama gave to the Middle East are now coming back through gangs through Central and South America up into the United States. We have a lot of guns that our government bequeathed to another area to fight for their freedom that are now shooting people in our area. You just have to understand. You have to read. You have to want to know the truth. You have to want to know the facts. And a child under 18 cannot buy a gun. A child under 21 cannot buy a handgun. And if they have possession of that weapon for hunting it, they have to be with an adult to be monitored. There's no one who could have stopped that boy from stealing that gun and doing what he did if he was determined to do it. Gun laws, nothing, it won't work. We don't have a gun problem. We have a personal heart problem. We have a we don't respect life problem. We don't respect society. We don't respect others. And we think we are some kind of God. And that if we are not happy, we should make everyone not happy. And that is a huge issue. We have such an ego in this nation, and the ego persists with people that are not fully mature. Their brains are not fully mature. They don't have full frontal lobe. Their social skills are nil. And yet you can look at someone that doesn't have a brain that is fully formed, that has a chemical overload going on because of hormonal changes and restructuring in the brain. And you can look at the person and see the deficits, but you will look at someone else and blame them. That is a problem. That is a problem. You look at that boy and know for 3 years he's been talking about harming people. The government was aware. They did very little. They didn't even come back when the father bought the gun and say, no, 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 no. Why do you think some things are overlooked and some things are pressed so harshly? Because I've seen people punished for absolutely nothing and made a spectacle of because they were someone with standing in the community. And I've seen other people, oh, it's okay. Go away. We'll get you next time. We know you'll reoffend. A lot of the responsibility of what's going wrong in this nation is from our media pushing emotionally disturbing issues, cognitive dissonance, dissociation, mental health issues. They're romanticizing it, pushing it upon our children. It's not a romantic thing. It's not a pleasant thing. It's not something that's going to get you glory. In his little manifesto that he was writing on Discord, he said that, I can't unalive myself because I've not done anything for culture. I'm going to have to do something big so I'm remembered. Hello, children. 99.9% of us are not remembered except for by loved ones. Get it out of your system. What's stuck in your craw? Why do you think you're that important? Parents, love your children, but make sure to tell them that everybody else loves their children too. Everyone's precious on this earth. No gun law would have stopped it. No gun law would stop anything because people that normally perform gun violence do so without doing anything that would have, there's no gun law that would have stopped them. They're illegal the whole way through. And I have a really big problem because I have people that are being paroled. I have to be aware. I have to protect myself. I could have retaliation. I've been lucky. I had a really good rapport with the majority of my caseload for the time that I worked. And I've not had really any big problems, but I've got a couple that are being released that did threaten me. I want to be able to protect myself. But if the government decided we could have pew-pews and I had to give mine up because I'm a law-abiding citizen, I still guarantee you that the person that wanted to retaliate against me for being their officer when they were on parole would still find a way to harm me. It's about the dedication of the evil mind, the dedication of the black spot in the heart, the dedication of people that desire to harm others. And that is something from antisocial and psychopathy and sociopathy standpoint we can't stop. But we can minimize it if we stop pressing other forms of mental health as romantic, as, predominant in our nation. They're not predominant. We do have one of the highest rates of mental health issues in our nation because it is pressed, it is romanticized, it is, oh, you should have a problem, you should have a diagnosis, no, you shouldn't. And a lot of stuff, they diagnosed them too young. And I was practicing, I was the therapist at one point. A lot of people want to diagnose them too young. There are rules with diagnosis, and a lot of therapists are starting to fudge the lines and push back and diagnose too early. And then they want to put them on medications on a changing brain that is not chemically sound, that is not hormonally sound, that is not fully formed. They want to put medications in there that's going to also mess the rest of it up. That brain needs to form. That's why people should be, monitored. Have a lot of family that loves them, professional they're seeing if necessary, and so they get mature. And then when their brain is mature and everything's calmed down, they're still having issues, that's when we step in with medication. We are rendering our youth pharmaceutically stupid because we're stopping their brains from forming naturally, and they're needing these pharmaceuticals because we start at such a young age. That brain is going to need it forever because it never forms. It's like you arrest the problem and they have it the rest of their life. It's like if someone starts drugs age 13 and they use for 10 years and they stop when they're 23, that person's going to act like a 13-year-old because their brain has been stopped in stasis. It did not mature. The drugs froze it. We have a lot of children in this nation that are on drugs from psychologists that shouldn't be on drugs, that their brains need to mature so that we can then want to monitor the children. We have a government that wants two parents working. And if you put a child in daycare, when I was in college, I worked in a daycare. I tried to give every child attention because I noticed that there were children that never got hugged, never got a toy, never got talked to. Daycares are just kind of like little penal institutions for toddlers and children. Unless you have a very good daycare. A lot of the ones that run on federal grants and stuff, they're very cold and they isolate the children almost. We have so much we could rectify, but we become so fixated on this will fix the problem. This is a multi-tier, multi-avenue approach to society that needs to happen. We need to retrain all parents. We need to have a very stern conversation with our government saying, hey, we need somebody at home to raise these children. They're getting a little out of hand. If you want me up the butt of 278 parolees, how about we let me stay home and sit on my children and raise them appropriately so they don't turn into a parolee? Might work. We do know that children that are raised with a parent at home are less likely to commit a crime. But here's the thing. This is something else you have to worry about. If you watch Dr. John Campbell and you saw his video last week, you will also understand that since 2020, there's been something going on. And last week, a peer-reviewed journal published a scientific study where they found nanotechnology replicating and upsetting our cellular structure in our bodies. And this nanotechnology was primarily found in the Moderna and Pfizer jibby jabs. Please go watch Dr. John Campbell. Please go read the peer-reviewed journal. Please go understand what's going on. Look at the pictures from the stereoscopic microscope pictures they took. This is a scary time. And if you go back and read about our nation, we got some history. Operation Paperclip should tell anybody we got a problem. There have been over 30 times that our government has been found to have been exercising illegal rights to test on us unaware. And with the rise in mental health issues, the things they do that are detrimental to families, to family structure, to nuclear family lifestyles, the way they romanticize mental health issues, I feel like we're all in just a little scenario where they're just testing us. Other scientists have studied towers that have recently gone up to look for pulses coming out of them that disrupt sleep and disrupt cellular regeneration during deep sleep. We've got a lot going on in this nation that is very questionable. And if you want to be an informed person, you must go and read. You must dig and read. You must go to other countries and read what's going on in other countries, and then come back and see what's being filtered and what we're not being allowed to understand and compost with what's happening in our world. There are a lot of things that you have to be aware of. And while I never thought that I would be looking at a society where nanotechnology was found in the cellular structure, that peer-reviewed journal and the scientific findings tell me that we are not respected by our government. We are not respected as living things that are supposed to be in control of our lives, make decisions that affect our health instead of having our health affected. Everyone wants to talk about the beautiful sunsets. Sunsets used to not be purple. The purple is caused by something that's being placed in the atmosphere. It starts with an L. These are things that you have to read. And I read constantly, I study constantly, and I am constantly in my libraries of my institutions, and I'm looking for new studies and things. Use those. Hey, if you're an alumni, use your library at your university and still get in there and read and look. The online libraries are great. Peer-reviewed only. Stay with peer-reviewed. Make sure that it has people that are questioning it, and make sure it's factual evidence. There's a lot going on in our world that we really need to be aware of. And for the last 4 years, my hackles have been up. Some people thought it was great to get a burger because they got a 5-second shot, not knowing what the 5-second shot was composed of or what it would do to them in the future, not knowing what any of this was about. And people looked at people that were hesitant to subject themselves, and they belittled them and attacked them. And we created a whole rift in our society that is not necessary, and certainly was not fruitful, and honestly was a moot point now that we're finding out you might as well take a glass of water with mercury or lead in it. I mean, that's about the gist of it. We have a lot going on that we're not aware of. And we have a lot of people that are not aware, that just want to spout things, just want to repeat phrases, repeat headlines, repeat ideology statements. And it's just like, I want you to know the back history and what you're saying. I want you to understand, if you have the audacity to say something antagonistic to another person, you should be able to explain yourself fully. If you say 2 to 4 words and retract, you are not adding anything to society. You're not bringing anything to the table, and your animosity is basically tearing down our structure within our society. Test yourself, educate yourself, and be able to have a discussion, not a confrontation, a discussion with people. Understand if you think something's wrong, like with gun laws, be able to talk about it, be able to understand the gun laws, tell them specifically where you think there is an issue. Now, I have so many questions about the shooting in Kentucky on the I-75. If you want to look it up, they're still looking for the man. They have found his SUV and the gun and the ammunition. I don't know. I don't really have a feeling about this. I believe it was a vet with PTSD that had some other family issues that probably had spurred him into an episode. And while that is sad, once again, we have to look. Our veterans are not being taken care of. And we have to go. That's something that probably could have been completely taken care of had our veterans been getting appropriate care or seen enough to have known, oh, we got a problem here. There are a lot of things that I wish with our government programs and the legal system, I wish there was more explanation for the public. And I wish that the government understood that sometimes when they put their foot in the cog, it stops everything from running efficiently. Just like when someone wanted rehab and they told me that they needed help. Yes, I could get them to a forensic social worker, and that forensic social worker could get them into rehab, but it may take up to 8 to 10 weeks sometimes. And normally they would reoffend and be in prison by then. And so they were hesitant to tell me they were having a problem. So I had the power to help them. But the power to help them also gave me the timeline to put them back in prison, even though they were being honest and asking for help. There's a lot of catch-22s in a lot of the stuff that we have as far as mental health and physical health in this nation. We've got to be more aware. We've got to understand what's going on. We've got to know that back in the day when the U.S. was working at biological weapons, the president at the time, oh God, who was it? Nixon? Was it Nixon? Who was it? Oh, I'm having a blank. Anyway, the president at the time said, destroy all of this. We have nuclear weapons. We do not need biological weapons that can be, used against us because they were so easily made. So the president said, destroy all of these. Well, they kept samples, locked them up, and those samples were put into agencies, the NIH and the NIAID. Anyway, I can't say that one. And they have been replicated again. Why? And why wasn't the command followed the first time? And why are we doing this again? Don't we know how that's going to work out? Have we not understood? How do you think a lot of viruses that have been dead for decades are popping back up? I know it's confusing for some, but it's not for me. If you work on a farm, you worked in horse farms, cattle farms, and sheep farms, you understand how a virus works through a herd and the presentation and the life. And you understand what's not a virus or what is not a natural virus. And a lot of people they make decisions without having the information to truly make a invested and educated decision. And we have a society that is inept. Not only are they inept, they're too lazy to open a book or research anything. They believe they're being told the truth. They set their life on that basis, and then that crumbles. And I believe we just need to be more aware. And I think being aware, trying to have a proactive and positive stance on understanding what's going on, having a verbal stance on what we don't agree with, politely, not hatefully, and saying, we understand, we see this track record, we understand where it's coming from, and it needs to stop. How do we change this and make it more prosperous for society? And there are people that are trying to do that. And again, the people in the way are the government agencies or government officials that, again, normally slow down processes of aid, help, or create programs that are not beneficial. Like this whole welfare daycare, it's not working. It's not worked since they started it. Why do we continue it? Why are we telling people raise your children in an isolated cold daycare where they might get touched once a day? No empathy, nothing shown to them. They are basically an inmate, but you need to work and make barely enough money to survive. All the while, your child pays for it. Look at the statistics for juvenile issues and go back through the years. You will see it greatly reduce. Why? Because there were parents at home, there were communities that monitored children, and there were people at home to handle issues before they became insurmountable explosions. There's something to be said for someone having a human component of care and then someone never having felt that. And I believe that is what we are battling in our society, in our families, and within our government officials. They have forgotten what it's like to be a person in this nation. They have forgotten what it's like to struggle, and they have forgotten what it's like to not be able to take advantage of everything. I just think that 330 plus million people should be able to be heard. I think that the truth on statistics should be able to be researched if you have 5 seconds and half a thought. I think that correction statistics and court statistics, you can see by the charges, the ones that aren't punished, the ones that are punished, and then if you go back in history, how that greatly reduces. And I'm not talking about adults, I'm talking about children. It greatly reduces because children had the care they needed. They had the environment they needed. There is no backup or replacement for a parent and a parent's love and a parent's constructive criticism, compassion, and showing that child a positive life. And sadly, a lot of parents think that you tell real things about our society. It is not. They're being forced to focus on things that are superficial, egotistical, and cause them to have great issues struggling with their own self-worth. Pull your child out of fiction and put them in reality and help them survive this world, and be gracious that they have a day to live, a day to breathe, and a day to interact with like-minded people, to share a smile, to share a hug, to say, I care about you. And I do. I care about everyone that comes to my channel. I want you to know the law, understand the law, research the law, and have a great knowledge about you so that you can interact in this world. But think about the way our court system's going. Think about the way the judicial system is being used. And think about the way this is being portrayed. Where will we be in 10 or 15 years? Go look at the juvenile statistics for the last 30. Where will we be in 10 or 15 more years? What are the key factors that have changed with their children? That's easily stated. How do we reverse this? That's also easily figured out. Why can't we do it? Why can't we be families that care again and have children that feel loved? It's pretty easy, isn't it? It's pretty easy to understand now. Anyway, if you're not knowledgeable, please look up the Edgewood experiments. Please look up Operation Paperclip. Please read about Monsanto. Please understand that other nations, other countries have great outlets of information that you need to be reading. Don't always stick your head in the sand and expect that your nation is going to tell you the absolute truth. Go and research. Be curious. Be positive, but be curious. And when you speak to somebody, try not to have an altercation, but try to be well-researched, well-versed, so that you can have a discussion, even if you disagree. Have a discussion and leave with a positive momentum about you. That's the most important thing. I don't feel any positive things that are going to come from this. And for the victims, that hurts me, because I know if I had a child that lost their life in an event like this, I would want something that could change the world to happen. Maybe it's just me, and maybe I'm a wishful dreamer, but I think that we have way more to offer than we're being allowed to give each other. And we need to talk about that. Bye, guys. I'll see you as soon as I get down the mountain, and we'll have a positive video with a lot of smiles and a lot of laughs and a lot of interesting craft items. So I'll see you with a positive note probably tomorrow or the next day. Y'all take care. Squeeze your loved ones. If you have someone that's struggling, tell them you love them. Tell them that they have an outlet to speak to you. And if someone is truly struggling, seek out other aid. But you would not believe what a family's love can do. And sometimes it's better than therapy, coming from somebody with a master's in psychology. So go and squeeze your loved ones. Have a great day. Think about things intelligently, logically. And set your emotions aside for 5 minutes. We've got to get this world back in order, and we've got to get society back into a better place. And I hope that we all find it. Bye, guys.